Okay, hi there. In the next video in our series on externalities, we're going to spend a few minutes focusing on positive externalities from consumption. So first of all, what are positive externalities? Well, they're defined as consumption and production which leads to third parties or bystanders benefiting from spillover effects. In other words, I do something, I consume something or produce something, and there's a third party benefit. And when there are positive externalities, then social benefit exceeds private benefit. Key reminder of that key equation: social benefit equals private benefit plus the external benefit. And at the margin, the marginal social benefit, MSB, equals the marginal private benefit plus the marginal external benefit. Well, there are loads of examples we can choose of acts of production or consumption which generate externalities that are positive. We're going to focus here on positive consumption externalities. So the consumption of healthcare, for example, gives you a private benefit, but has a wider benefit to your family and to the broader community and societies in which you live. You can make a very strong case for saying that masking up during a public health crisis such as a pandemic, there's a private cost and a private benefit to you, but there must also be an external benefit of doing that. The government is trying to encourage people to use their bikes and exercise more, so subsidised cycle schemes in urban areas can generate positive spillovers. So too the wider use of public libraries, museums, galleries and community spaces, both indoors and outdoors. There must be significant external benefits from that. Keep in mind, of course, during the pandemic, during lockdown, limited access to these spaces has had a significant impact on people's mental as well as physical health. The negative externalities of withdrawing these aspects. Things like free school meals, improved nutritional advice, that creates external benefits. So too, apple orchards that allow bee populations to prosper. And people taking up the offer of vaccinations. There's a private cost and a private benefit, but there's also an external benefit as well. So positive externalities from consumption are all around us. Now, how can we analyse positive externalities using cost and benefit curve diagrams? How can you get great analysis marks on this? Well, here's a brief example. Consider a local authority increasing their spending on local library services, perhaps providing mobile libraries for people, or increased opening hours, or building new libraries, or perhaps providing iPads to people who can't afford them, and other learning resources to the wider community. The key thing about positive externalities is that improved access to and use of things like libraries, museums and galleries can generate external benefits over time. And take a moment to think about what those external benefits can be in terms of building, for example, cultural capital, in terms of building community spirit and what have you. So in a case of positive externalities from consumption, that causes the marginal social benefit to be higher than the marginal private benefit. So I've drawn here marginal social benefit as higher than marginal private benefit, and the marginal external benefit is the vertical distance between those two curves. One way of thinking about this is that marginal social benefit, MSB, that's the ideal demand from society's point of view, whereas marginal private benefit, MPB, well, that's the actual demand, if you like, from the consumer. Now, in a free market, typically, consumption will be at Q1 because demand equals supply. People only think about their own benefits, private benefits and private costs. However, this is socially inefficient because at Q1, the social marginal benefit is greater than the cost to society. So therefore, there's basically underconsumption of the positive externality. And that underconsumption is market failure. Society would prefer the output to be Q2, where at least we take into account the positive externalities. Social efficiency would be Q2. If we stay at Q1, there is underconsumption, and this is indeed a cause of market failure. So we tend to underconsume items, goods and services that generate external benefits if we don't factor them into account. Well, if you want to develop your analysis to get top marks for analysis, how can we show the social welfare loss that comes about from the market failure due to positive consumption externalities? Again, the society would prefer a level of consumption of Q2, whereas the free market equilibrium, which only considers private costs and benefits, is at Q1. So therefore, labelling some key parts of the diagram, the deadweight loss of social welfare is shown by the area A, B, C. You see from output Q1 to Q2, the social benefit is greater than the cost of supply. So we're losing some social welfare if we stick at output Q1. Well, what interventions might be used to correct the market failures from positive externalities of consumption? Well, loads of options. The key thing really is to bring down the cost of supply or the cost of consumption. So perhaps the government could offer a subsidy direct to the consumer, which reduces their private cost and increases their real purchasing power. The obvious intervention would be some form of subsidy to the producer to increase their supply by lowering their unit costs. The government could step in and directly provide and fund things like museums, galleries, public parks, beaches and libraries. Many of you will be interested in behavioural economics, trying to use, for example, behavioural nudges to try to change behaviour and increase their consumption of activities that generate external benefits. And sometimes you have to bring in some idea of compulsion, if you like, mandated choice. For example, minimum school leaving ages and things. Perhaps even making things like vaccinations compulsory for certain groups. Who knows? These things are clearly in the news at the moment. So there we go. That was a look at positive consumption externalities. And in the next video, we'll take a look at positive externalities from production.